Imagine finding a tiny spider in your bedroom. Instead of reaching for a shoe, you calmly open a briefcase, prime a nuclear warhead, and detonate it, vaporizing the spider, your house, your neighborhood, and your own family. To any rational mind, this is absolute madness. Yet inside your body, this catastrophic overreaction happens every single second. A microscopic grain of plant pollen drifts into your nose. A molecule of peanut butter touches your tongue. A stray protein from a shrimp enters your bloodstream. These are not predators. They have no teeth, no venom, no intent to harm. Yet your immune system glances at them, panics, and pulls the pin on a metaphorical grenade. Within minutes, your blood vessels open their floodgates, your airways constrict to a chokehold, and your blood pressure plummets into an abyss. This is the ultimate biological paradox. Why does an evolutionary masterpiece, perfected over millions of years to ensure your survival, possess a hair trigger mechanism capable of murdering you over a piece of seafood? The answer is not a design flaw. It is a ghost story. A story about a phantom enemy we conquered too quickly, leaving our internal army with a license to kill and absolutely nothing to do. Act 1. The Forgotten Hygiene and the Ancient Treaty. To understand why your body throws a nuclear tantrum over a peanut, we must travel backward through the dark corridors of deep time. For 99% of human history, survival was not a given. It was a brutal daily negotiation with monsters. But these monsters did not have claws or fangs. They were silent, microscopic, and incredibly patient. They were parasitic worms. From the perspective of a single human cell, a parasitic worm is not a mere pathogen. It is a city-scale leviathan, a biological kaiju stretching across the internal horizon of your gut. These parasites did not simply enter the body to destroy it. They built empires inside us. They set up shop in our intestines, anchored themselves to our tissue, drank our blood, and laid millions of eggs that traveled back into the soil and water supply, creating a perpetual, unbreakable cycle of infection. Every single one of your ancestors lived, breathed, fought, and died with a belly full of worms. It was an inescapable tax on existence. But evolution does not leave a species defenseless. To combat an enemy of this scale, the human immune system could not rely on its standard infantry cells. You cannot kill a dragon with a butter knife. The outer skin of a parasitic worm is an evolutionary marvel in itself. A thick, elastic, highly resilient protective sheath capable of withstanding the corrosive cascade of human stomach acid. To breach this armor, the human body had to develop an entirely separate, highly specialized, and terrifyingly violent branch of military hardware. This brings us to the birth of the adaptive immune system's heavy artillery, the immunoglobulin E antibody, or IgE, and its primary delivery platforms, the mast cells, eosinophils, and basophils. When a worm entered the body for the first time, specialized intelligence cells would gather its proteins and rush them to the lymph nodes, commissioning the biological weapons factories known as B cells to manufacture millions of IgE antibodies. These antibodies are shaped like microscopic biological grappling hooks, engineered to lock onto the parasite's skin with magnetic precision. Once released, these IgE antibodies flood the body, but they do not float aimlessly. They seek out mast cells. Mast cells are the heavy bombers of your immune system. They are massive, bloated cells packed to the brim with histamine, cytokines, and a cocktail of highly destructive, tissue-melting chemicals. The IgE antibodies attach themselves to the surface of the mast cells, covering them completely until the mast cell resembles an angry, weaponized hedgehog. It is a landmine waiting for a footstep. When a worm finally encounters these armed mast cells, the reaction is instantaneous and catastrophic. The mast cells do not negotiate, they detonate. They release their entire chemical payload in a fraction of a second, a process known as degranulation. The released histamine instantly tears open the surrounding blood vessels, flooding the tissue with fluid to literally flush the parasite away. It orders the mucous membranes to go into overdrive, drowning the worm in a thick, sticky ocean of slime. Simultaneously, chemical alarms scream through the bloodstream, summoning eosinophils, specialized shock troops that arrive by the hundreds of thousands to vomit highly toxic proteins directly onto the worm, ripping its protective armor to shreds. This was the ancient reality. It was a war of attrition characterized by extreme, localized violence, massive inflammation, and physical purging through violent muscle contractions, which we experience as diarrhea and vomiting. It was uncomfortable, it was exhausting, but it kept our ancestors alive. For millions of years, an unspoken treaty existed. The worms tried to suppress our immune response to stay alive, and our immune system dialed its aggression up to maximum to counteract the suppression. It was a perfectly balanced tug of war. Act 2, the Great Disconnection and the Unemployed Army. Then, in a historical blink of an eye, the world changed. A mere 2 centuries ago, humanity achieved what no other species had ever done. We broke the cycle. We invented modern sanitation. We separated our drinking water from our waste. We synthesized soap, developed chlorinated water systems, and introduced anti-parasitic medications. Within a few generations, the ancient Hygies were completely wiped out from the modern world. In developed nations, urban populations grew up in an unprecedented environment, an environment completely devoid of helminthic parasites. On paper, this is humanity's greatest triumph. We conquered the ancient monsters. But evolution operates on a timescale of millions of years, not decades. Your DNA does not know that you live in a clean apartment with filtered water and antibacterial hand soap. Your bone marrow is still operating on the assumption that you are a Pleistocene hunter-gatherer wading through muddy, contaminated streams, constantly under siege by parasitic invaders. This historical mismatch created a terrifying psychological and physiological crisis inside our bodies. The unemployed army syndrome, the highly aggressive, hyper-violent anti-parasite apparatus, the Ig antibodies, the weaponized mast cells, the toxic eosinophils is still being produced by your bone marrow every single day. But when these cells look out across the internal landscape of the modern human body, they find absolutely nothing to fight. To demonstrate the severity of this evolutionary whiplash, we can look at the landmark epidemiological shift documented by Dr. David Strachan in 1989, famously formulated as the Hygiene Hypothesis. Strachan noticed a bizarre statistical anomaly. Children born into larger families with older siblings or those raised on traditional farms had significantly lower rates of hay fever and allergic diseases than only children raised in sterile, hyper-sanitized suburban environments. The scientific community was forced to confront a radical, counterintuitive truth. By cleaning our external environment, we had broken our internal calibration system. In nature, when a young immune system develops, it requires constant, low-level exposure to mud, bacteria, and parasites. This exposure acts as a training ground. It teaches the regulatory arm of the immune system, the T regulatory cells, how to turn the volume down. The presence of parasites actually forces the body to produce anti-inflammatory molecules to keep the immune response from destroying its own host. Without this training, without the ancient enemy to push against, the immune system loses its calibration. It remains locked in a state of high alert, hyper-aggressive, paranoid, and desperately searching for a target. The evolutionary tug-of-war didn't stop. The other side just let go of the rope, causing our immune system to fly backward and crash into a state of permanent hysteria. The heavy artillery is loaded, the safety pins are pulled, and the soldiers are terrified of the silence. Act 3. The cognitive shift and the dawn of autoimmunity. When an army is highly trained, armed with devastating weapons, and starved of a legitimate enemy, it will eventually invent one. This is the precise moment where a harmless biological entity transitions into a deadly allergen. This is the cognitive twist of modern medicine. Your allergy is not a disease of weakness. It is a disease of misdirected strength. Let us trace the precise anatomy of this betrayal using the example of a shellfish allergy. You eat a shrimp. As your digestive system breaks down the food, specific proteins enter your system. In a calibrated immune system, these proteins are recognized as nutrients and ignored. But in an uncalibrated paranoid system, an idle B cell stumbles upon a shrimp protein and sounds the alarm. It misidentifies the shape of the shrimp protein as the armor of an ancient parasite. The B cell immediately begins manufacturing millions of IgE antibodies specifically targeted against shrimp. These antibodies flood your tissues and coat your mast cells. You don't feel anything yet. This is the sensitization phase. You think you are perfectly fine. But your body has just quietly mapped a direct path to its own destruction. You have built a million landmines all tuned to the frequency of a shrimp. Years later, you sit down at a restaurant and take a single bite of a shrimp. The moment those specific proteins touch your tissue, the trap springs. The mast cells recognize the frequency. They don't see food. They see a city-scale kaiju invading the perimeter. The order is given to unleash hell. Because the shrimp protein spreads through your bloodstream faster than a localized worm ever could, the mast cell explosion is not confined to one area. It happens everywhere simultaneously. In your skin, millions of mast cells degranulate, causing blood vessels to dilate and leak fluid into the surrounding tissue. Your skin breaks out in raging, red, intensely itchy hives as your nervous system interprets the chemical flood as an emergency. In your gastrointestinal tract, the smooth muscles contract with violent force, causing agonizing cramps, nausea, and projectile vomiting as your intestines desperately try to expel a phantom parasite that isn't there. But the true horror occurs in your respiratory and cardiovascular systems. The massive release of histamine causes the smooth muscles surrounding your airways to clamp down, narrowing your bronchi into tiny straws. You begin to suffocate, fighting for air as your lungs fill with mucus and fluid. Simultaneously, because billions of blood vessels across your entire body have dilated and leaked fluid all at once, there is no longer enough pressure to push blood to your brain and vital organs. This is anaphylactic shock. Your blood pressure drops to near zero levels. Your heart begins to fail. Consider the terrifying speed of this reaction. A pathogen like Ebola or the plague requires days, if not weeks, to multiply, hijack your cellular machinery, and cause organ failure. Your own immune system can completely terminate your life in less than 3 minutes. It is a masterclass in internal sabotage. The very mechanism that allowed our species to survive the parasite-ridden swamps of our evolutionary past has become a self-destruct button in the clean, comfortable confines of the modern world. the implications of this evolutionary glitch extend far beyond simple allergies. This same lack of immune calibration is driving the catastrophic rise of autoimmune diseases worldwide, conditions like Crohn's disease, multiple sclerosis, and type 1 diabetes. In these scenarios, the unemployed army doesn't just attack external proteins like peanuts or shellfish. It turns its weapons directly onto your own myelin sheaths, your own pancreatic cells, your own intestinal lining. We are living in an era where humanity has successfully conquered its external predators, only to find that the ultimate predator is staring back at us from within our own white blood cells. We have traded the external parasite for an internal ghost, and we are currently paying the price for peace with our own tissue. The rise of allergies is a stark reminder that we cannot cheat millions of years of evolutionary history without a cost. Our bodies do not crave a sterile utopia, they crave balance. While we cannot and should not bring back parasitic worms to cure our modern ailments, we must change how we interact with our environment. Stop hyper-sanitizing every square inch of your life. Let your children touch the dirt, interact with animals, and develop in an environment that teaches their immune system how to be at peace. We conquered the wilderness outside us, but we must now learn to manage the wilderness within. If you want to understand more about the deep, hidden psychological and biological forces that shape human nature, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Leave a comment below telling us, what is your body's phantom enemy? What are you allergic to? And how has it changed your life? Let us know, and let us explore the shadows of the human condition together.